Good evening. It's Thursday night and it's 8 o'clock. It's 1 minute past 8 tonight. But it's still the JFDI podcast and it's still High G's. And tonight, oh, listen, I'm really excited. I've not even had a chance to catch up with him in the virtual green room, really. It is my absolute pleasure and honour to introduce someone I have. There's a theme emerging on here. There's a number of people that I've introduced who I've not actually had the chance to physically meet, although I've known in the virtual world this evening's guest for a few years. I first heard of this guest when I stumbled across a poem that he'd written, and I saw video to it on YouTube. It was a poem called Blokes. It's still one of my favourite poems of my guest, but he's written so many others. His live performances, again, I've only had the opportunity to see on YouTube to date, but we will change that at some point in time, have been highly praised. And honestly, I could go on and talk about the publications that this man has appeared in, some of the media attention that he has drawn. He's laughing in the virtual green room. He's an absolute genius when it comes to delivering a performance in spoken word. Honestly, when I saw his collaboration with a wonderful animation gentleman called Matt Frodsham, hopefully he'll talk a little bit about it tonight as well, a poem called 2 Inches to the Right actually felt my heart stop when I was listening to this. This is the effect that some of his poetry has had on me. So he's also a very keen skateboardist that you will have heard me say earlier on. But as some of his lyrics and in fact the title of one of his published books would suggest, he's had his fair share of falls, accidents and broken bones over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce, before the hour is up, the one and only Matt Lloyd. Good evening, sir. How are you?
That was a pretty good build-up. It can only go downhill from now. Like, it can only be bad. Like, it can only be bad.
Listen, it's an absolute pleasure to finally get a chance to speak to you. We even tried to like physically meet up when I was doing some traveling to and fro to London, but it never happened, did it?
No, not at all. And I honestly, I feel like a weak guest because I've been listening to some of your other podcasts with certainly the last few because I do my research. And I'm like, oh God, why am I going on this podcast? Like, these are all like dudes that are like really serious and they've got good stories and stuff. And I'm just like a bloke that likes to rhyme.
You have some stories. In fact, I was gonna say, like, you need to excuse me if I start fanboying. Honestly, I mean, listen, for those that are tuning in, and I've got them in front of me. So the first book, this. And these, they feel like gems. Yeah, that the demo tape and obviously the Cracks and the Curbs EP that I showed you earlier, and then we didn't even get a chance to speak about whether we should just go straight into this or do it at the end. So
let's do it at the end. I need to warm my voice up. I mean, after that intro, it's only going to be downhill. So we'll get that. We'll do that at the end.
Brilliant. And we'll come on to this and other stuff at the end as well. So no, listen, there is absolutely nothing weak. And as I said to most of my guests, I invite people on because I'm genuinely passionate about one or a number of similar things that the person does, and I have a genuine interest in finding out more about them. And that is definitely the case tonight. And if some of the questions based on some of the words in some of your poems have anything to go by, unless, and I know that as creative types do have a vivid imagination, if the words from these are even, you know, closely based on the truth, then
no, it's all true. It's all true. It's all true.
Well, there you
Like
go.
there's nothing in there that isn't true. And I think that it's because I grew up listening to hip hop, which is what got me into poetry. And I come from that school of listening to hip hop where the guys, the rappers were always like, look, I write about real life. And that is kind of, I don't rap, you know, I am a spoken word artist, but I come from that school of everything I write is 100% true. Like, and there is some horrible stuff in there, you know, and some embarrassing stuff about having an average sized penis, you know, like, but it's all genuine. Like, it is all genuine because that's all I can do. I can't write about stuff that isn't real, but, you know, like, that I've experienced, because I find that super difficult because you're just making it up, right?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Exactly. That was another one. When you said you enjoy performing it, I was like, if we've got time, we got to do that, because so the audience type here. So let me just, before we go into your songs, let me give you a little bit more insight into another of the reasons that I thought having you on here would be a delight for me, but also for some of my listeners, my viewers, that are quite a lot of whom are ex-forces. So the reason that my attention was drawn to you was Blokes, and there's just something about that poem that immediately struck me as the relationship between every guy and his mate that has ever served in the forces as well, to an absolute T. And so it resonated with me, and I know there'll be a lot of people that listen that won't have heard it, that will go and listen to it, and they'll go, my God. So it's, although you may not have a military background, there's certainly something there that I just knew immediately resonated. So that, you know, I've got that to thank. And what a delightful, you know, that poem is so. But we'll come on to
it was the first poem that I wrote where I performed it in front of other people, and they were like, you know, like, people come and talk to me afterwards, and that was, I suppose, when my brain sort of said, you know, I know I'm okay at this, but actually I'm bringing, you know, like, I could be doing something better with, you know, like, I could be doing something more with what I'm doing. And yeah, I mean, I love Blokes too. I think, you know, I was an army brat. I never served. I was an army brat through and through. Like, my pops was like in the army, but I think it's a man thing. Like, you look at the suicide rates in men, they're very, very high compared to ladies. You know, I mean, you know, obviously suicide rates are terrible, but and I think a lot of it is men struggle, not so much now when you look at the younger generation, but men of our generation. I'm 43. You know, like, I think the phrase "man up's" probably killed more people than we will ever realize, because man up did, you know, it never helped anybody. But that's what we were told. That's what I was told. You know, I still struggle with sharing, but I'm learning because I see how young people share. And, you know, sometimes, wow, what? But at the same time, like, and I suppose Blokes, for me, I'm pretty terrible at sharing, but for some reason, I'm pretty good if I can write it in a poem and then perform it in front of loads of people, like, you know. And then, you know, like, people would have conversations with me about it, and they do about other poems that I do now. And I kind of realized and of course, the way people interpret what you do too. So what you get from Blokes might not be what somebody else gets from the poem. And that's the sort of, yeah, I mean, yeah, Blokes for me happened. Like, it was a friend of mine, you know, and I suppose just one of the things, like you say, I think for me, I did Blokes. I was in Margate performing on Sunday night at the Albion Rooms, which is Pete Doherty's joint down there. And I performed Blokes, and still, if you've never heard the poem before, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And it kind of, I suppose now I look back and I see that I draw people in because they laugh at all the stuff that we talk about. And then it's at the end, they then realize, and still now, every so often, I mean, last time I did it in Margate, the time before this one, I heard an audible gasp from this woman, because of course she had no idea what I was really talking about. And
Yeah.
it's blokes. I mean, that's, I mean, when we did do the video and it did really well, we gave it to the charity Calm, which is the campaign against living miserably, that sort of campaigns to sort of bring awareness to suicide in men between the age of 24 and 35. I can't remember what the age range is, but with the highest range of suicide.
Yeah.
Because it just, you get people talking, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, what you've said, and we've not had this discussion, what you've just said there, one of the reasons that I kind of started doing this actually, was I had started kind of sharing my journey on, with friends, and I was asking, speaking to people in my ex-forces community, and just kind of trying to bring people together, and slowly other people kind of doing the same. And ironically, it's all kind of come from a place that stems from us all getting to a certain age, and there's a large group of people that we kind of, our formative years went from being boys to becoming men, and we were all in the military, and we're now, so I'll be 50 this year, right? And
looking good for it, bro. Looking good for it.
Thank you. but we've lost so many, too many of our, we're colleagues and friends of that time, and we've honestly, as a group, we all struggle to talk about these things. So what you've just said there, absolutely, that's why it resonates so much. And like you said about the suicide rate as well, I want to park that for a minute, because we're going to come straight back to this towards the end for a reason. It's something that's actually happened really recently as well. But let's talk about the music, because if we don't, we'll never get to it, and we'll be here all night. Because I actually double checked. I am so glad your first song. I'm so glad that you chose this song, because I put it on tonight and I was like, come on. I always listen to them. So the first song that you've chosen is Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. So really keen to know what the story is there.
Well, it's a funny one, not the story, but when I was thinking about, and I was listening to the other podcast, and I was thinking about what tunes I would pick, and I was trying to pick tunes that were momentous in my life or give me great memories. And Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. I was a kid in JHQ Mönchengladbach, living on the army camp with my my family. And basically, at this point, I had a skateboard. So I was like 11 years old, probably. I had a skateboard, but I had no idea about fashion, skateboards, anything. I just knew I liked skateboarding, and my mum bought all my clothes from C&A, so it was kind of cool, like whatever. And then I bumped into a set of kids who, if you remember, I don't know, but as a kid on an army camp, you had the regular kids, and then you had the Rodneys, and the Rodneys were the kids whose parents were officers' kids, and they were all a bit posh, right? But I was a Rodney because my dad was an officer, but my dad joined the army at 15, where they still split up the Catholics and the Protestants.
Right.
So like I never really got on with the Rodneys. I got on with the regular kids, so we used to hang out. And then literally one day, before I'd really sort of discovered the two groups, I bumped into like this girl, and I can't remember her name, but she was in all black. She had Doc Martens on. She had like a nose piercing, crap hanging out her ears, and she hung out with all the grunge kids. Yeah. And I suppose for me, that was the moment I discovered like a thing, like before then I was just a kid with a skateboard. But then when I found them, they listened to Nirvana, they listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers, they listened to Pearl Jam. But I mean, when it seems like now when you think of them, you're like, oh, Pearl Jam. But dude, back then, like that was serious. Like Nirvana was no joke, was it? Like it was. And we went to a party the same day that I bumped into these kids, and I'm like 11. They're probably between 11 and 16. We went to somebody's house. They were drinking, they smoked, they all wore black. And that was when I was like, oh, this is, you know, like, because I'm young, I was like, this is cool. And then I remember my mum tells the story. She took me to CNA about 2 weeks later, and I was like, I want black t-shirts and black jeans. I want Dr. Martin beats, you know, like all that sort of crap. I mean, you can't get Dr. Martens from CNA, but you know what I mean? And it was like, that was, for me, Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit is such a big piece of my development, really. And I forget about that sometimes.
Yeah.
People were normally asking me about hip hop or like, you know, but actually Nirvana was that first moment on JHQ. I'm skateboarding down the road, wearing probably a dodgy, like brightly coloured t-shirt with some surfers on from CNA, most likely. And I bump into her. If her name comes to me, I remember it. And I just remember thinking like, oof, you know, like you just kind of knew. And then that was it. Like next thing I know, I'm a grunge kid. I'm wearing plaid shirts, which has never changed. You know what I mean? A lot of black, like just, yeah. So, but I mean, you remember that feeling when you listen to Nirvana for the first time, and it was like, you know, like think back, like oof, you were listening to something, like you knew it was something different.
Yeah, I remember hearing them and was like a bit scared.
Yeah, because it was so different. And before that, I think I probably listened to like Status Quo, Meatloaf. You know what I mean? Just stuff which was, you know, like cool. We all love a bit of Meatloaf, right? But I hadn't really associated anything with it. And then with Nirvana came grunge, you know, like, and then was kind of, I suppose for me, it was kind of that moment where I sort of went from being a boy to sort of not necessarily being a man, but being somebody who kind of knew a little bit more about life.
Yeah. And so I've written down. I wasn't sure exactly what age you were around this time, but like kind of putting one and two together. You know, your poem "No Regrets," right? Another one that I really like. So again, there's some tales in there from around that time, and then you know, sort of a little bit beyond. What would you say around that time, or that childhood, or that sort of, again, those kind of almost formative years of like going from sort of being a kid to becoming, you know, like you say, not quite a man, of those years? What sort of childhood lesson? Because in that poem, obviously, no regrets. You'd regret all of this, but actually the only regret would have been to not have learned anything. So yeah, what childhood lesson do you think has had the biggest impact on your life?
Oh man, I mean, no regrets as a poem. I love it. It's my favorite to perform, mainly because I kind of wrote it for my mum, because it was sort of an apology about, you know, I'm sorry I was such a dickhead when I was a kid, you know, but I kind of learned from it all. And she saw it live for the first about 3 years ago, and it was perfect, like perfect venue. The crowd laughed exactly where they should laugh. They knew my mum was in the audience. And it was the first time she was hearing it properly. But I mean, it's a strange one, right? Not to be too forces, but I grew up as a forces kid. So before I was like 20, I spent probably maximum of 4 years in any place. So I moved around a lot and met a lot of different people and a lot of kids. And really the lesson that I learned growing up as a forces brat. My dad keeps telling me we've got another word for forces brat. Oh, pad brat. That's what he likes to say, pad brat.
But scaly brat as well is sometimes used, right?
But I suppose the lesson that that taught me is common sense. You know, like it really did. You know, like moving around a lot, hanging out with different types of people, having to fend for yourself. And yeah, we got away with a lot of naughty stuff when we were kids on army camps. Like we really did. But it meant that when I went out into the world, I'm a bit more, I suppose I've got a bit more streetwise about me. You know, I'm a bit more common sense, whereas a lot of kids who didn't grow up within the forces and moving around and things like that, you know, like I remember my group of friends as a classic example. When they all went to uni, they kind of they got a lot of the partying and the pharmaceutical stuff out of the way. So when they went to uni, because they'd kind of sort of done all that sort of messing around and stuff. Whereas a lot of the kids who grew up in one place forever, then went to uni and then went completely bananas, you know. And I just think that for me, the biggest lesson was just getting a bit of common sense, streetwise. You know what I mean? Like just knowing how to fend for yourself.
Yeah, and it's kind of helped through life.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's kind of. I mean, yeah, it's kind of sad because my dad was in horses for so long, and I never followed in his footsteps. But at the same time, yeah.
So here's one for you, because this is the sort of age we're talking about, sort of early years at the moment, right? Yeah. So it's kind of relevant. It's quite topical. What do you make of these sort of 13-year-old Olympic skateboard champions?
I mean, again, when it comes to, I mean, skateboarding for me as an older dude, I'm very. This is my new setup that I got the other day. Can't wait. But I mean, skateboarding for me, I understand the importance of the Olympics in regards to what it will bring to skateboarding. And skateboarding is my culture. I know that sounds bananas when you say it out loud sometimes, but that's what I grew up in and grew up around. You know, my career is now in skateboarding, thankfully, and all that sort of stuff. So it is. The Olympics to me is all about money. Nike can kiss my ass. Get out of skateboarding, please. You know, like, you're a bunch of scumbags. I'm okay with that. But I also understand that a lot of kids are going to watch skateboarding at the Olympics and they're going to get into it. And it's going to be a great influence to get girls into skateboarding, more girls in skate. The more girls we have in skateboarding, the better. And there's a big girls movement right now. The more just different people, you know, like skateboarding itself wants to be this big, all-encompassing, all-welcoming, like, we love everybody, but we're lying out of our ass. Skateboarding's not at all like that. Like, skateboarding's dreaming that it's like that. But now in the last few years, skateboarding really has had to open its doors, embrace the LGBTQ community properly, and actually be open and learn stuff. You know, bring women into it, bring transgender skateboarders into it, and it's great. And so for me, 13-year-olds in the Olympics, you know, skateboarding, you know, it's only going to do good for skateboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. No exposure. No, you know, is bad exposure, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, there'll always be people of my age and above who will be like, no, fuck the Olympics. You know, I just want to read Thrasher and watch like hash videos, and that's cool. But we also have to remember that, you know, like many things. I was talking to this kid on Sunday night, actually, who was telling me, he goes, "Oh, I never read poetry. You know, like, I'll be honest with you, I never read it." Like, and I was like, you know, that's cool to say that, but at the same time, poetry is like music. There's so much of it out there, and like skateboarding, there's so much of it out there. You're going to find some of it that you really like, and some of it that you really hate. You've just got to find a bit you like. You know, like, you know, and skateboarding is the same. Life's the same, isn't it? Like, you just experience everything, decide what you like, and go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the subject of what you like, that's a perfect time for us to go straight to your number two. So I've got them in the right order. Number two is it's an NWA song, right? Straight out of Compton.
So I suppose, you know what, really, it should have been NWA Fuck the Police, right? But because I was maybe about 12 before I really got hard into grunge and Nirvana.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of just getting into it. Somebody had an NWA CD at school, and it was straight out of Compton. And as a kid, hearing a group say "fuck the police," you're like, "Oh, fuck the police!" You know, you're 12 years old, like you're like, "Whoa," you know, this is really, you know, like really naughty. But actually, that's what opened me up into starting to write poetry and rhymes. Was listening to NWA and then going like, "Oh, what is this? Like, this is kind of naughty, but I like it. What they're talking about? They're talking about things I've never heard about." And then, you know, sort of then expanding my, you know, listening to, you know, KRS-One, Ice-T, BDP, you know, like, and funnily enough, I was talking about this recently. It was my dad used to take me shopping to the American PX in Rhine-Darlen. And it was because at the American PX they had hip hop, they had gangster rap tapes that were by the till. So you could buy the horrible baseball cards with the cinnamon chewing gum and gangster rap tapes. And I would just pick up a tape, I'd look at it and think, "Oh, that's a cool cover." Give it to dad and be like, "Can you buy me this?" And of course, it was the American PX, so everything was cheap. And they had hip hop tapes nobody had yet because it was, you know, like, we're not in the UK or Germany and stuff like that. And then so that was so like NWA I listened to, and that got me into hip hop. But then just going shopping with my dad to the PX.
Yeah.
I mean, Ice Cube definitely was an awesome lyricist. Like, I mean, dude, one of the greatest out there. And he's still, the weird thing about the old school boys is people like Ice Cube and KRS-One is a really good example of this. I actually don't think they've got any worse. Like, I think they got this good and they've stayed that good. It's just the way people listen to hip hop and think about hip hop has changed. So you listen to KRS-One right now, his latest album, he still sounds like KRS-One and amazing. It's just that maybe the mainstream has moved away from that sort of hip hop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, NWA was the reason I started thinking about words and started writing and stuff. And then, I mean, you know, it was a seminal album for so many people straight out of Compton. Right.
It's actually it's a good thing that you chose the song that you did, because I do a playlist. So I've created a playlist of every guest that's come on and stuck all their songs on the playlist. So it's growing massive on like Spotify and Apple Music, JFDI podcast. But the guest on my second ever show chose NWA's "Fuck the Police." So now we have. So you can give a big shout out to Pat Penn if you like, because that's who chose it.
Good choice, Pat Penn. Good choice. Good choice. Good choice.
So now we have 2 NWA songs on the podcast playlist. So
nice. I'm going to get on that and slap that on my phone as well. I think that's good.
I'll tell you what, mate. There's some quite diverse choices on there.
That's all good for the brain. All good. I did try and make mine kind of diverse, but I also didn't want to lie. You know when people are like, "Give me a list of tunes," and you're like, "Shall I pick a tune that's going to make me look really intelligent?" I'm like, no. Just be honest.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it was. Like you say, absolutely seminal. Have you watched the Hip Hop Evolution stuff on Netflix?
You know what? I haven't properly. I've watched a little bit here and there, but it took me ages to watch the NWA movie. Have you watched the NWA movie as well?
Yeah. Loved it.
It took me ages to watch that because I feel like when you grew up and NWA was a thing and it was like real, like I remember trying to go to a shop and buy their second album, El for Zaggin, as it was in the UK, and being told that we weren't old enough to buy it. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. And reading about them in Hip Hop Connection, it took me ages. And actually the movie's really good. It is really good.
Well, do you know what I saw today? In fact, have I got it here? It popped up on my timeline that Rhyme Pays, Ice-T's debut.
I think I posted this, Graham.
Was it you that posted it?
Yeah, I think I posted this.
It was the first album to have the parental advisory label on it.
Yeah, it was. First first rap album to have it on. Yeah. I think it was the first album in general. Tipper Gore, you got to blame for that.
Tipper Gore.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Yeah, because
I love, honestly, I'm when it comes to hip hop, of all of the hip hop artists I've ever listened to, Ice-T is my hip hop god. Like, oh, he's got it on the vinyl. Nice.
but look, it doesn't. I don't have it. I don't have it.
No, but you do have. Wait a minute. Yeah. Because I actually had the cassette too, and it was a sticker, so it wasn't even part of the actual thing. It was just a sticker that was put on the album.
Oh,
And if I remember the one I had, it was a round
oh.
sticker. Yeah.
I'll bet you I've taken it off. Yeah. In fact, do you know what? I not completely unplanned. You ain't going to believe this. So this album was gifted to me by, you know, what we were talking about right at the start about us not talking about things amongst blokes. This album was given to me as a gift by a friend of mine when we were, when it came out. So
86 or 87.
Yeah, so I would be like 15 at the time. I joined the Air Force a few years later. And I hadn't been in the Air Force any more than about 2 years. And the guy who gave me this was dead. And I haven't spoken to friends about it for years. Yeah, he I don't think he couldn't have even been 20. So there you go. I didn't know I was going to pull that out tonight, but there you are. Crazy. So that was NWA, and straight out of Compton. I want to move on. I want to move on to your third song. Unless there's any, is there anything else about NWA?
No, dude. I mean, it goes in. So NWA got me into writing rhymes and hip hop and stuff like that. And then the next tune, which is Gil Scott-Heron's "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," was the tune that I heard, and I was like, maybe I was 15, I think, you know, maybe 15, 16, and I just no. So I must have been about 15, because I heard this tune, and obviously I was a kid at the time in Cumbria. You know, at a majority, like totally probably all white school at the time, and I heard this tune, and the reason why that sort of stuff is important, because I heard this tune, and despite everything, you know, I just knew what I was listening to really meant something. Like, and it's an old tune, obviously, like, so I'm just a kid who's then hearing this, so you're talking 95, so the tune's already decades old, but still, and I just knew what I was listening to. And then I kind of did my research into what the tune was, saw its roots in hip hop. And that was when I started to then kind of change how I write. And I went from writing what I suppose was essentially hip hop poems to thinking a little bit more about the subjects that I'm writing about and the message that I'm putting across when I write. And I was an idiot at school. I mean, you've heard No Regrets. Like I was, I mean, you know, but there was also that side of me that I suppose just when it came to writing and stuff, even now, like I just thought about it more. And and then I started writing differently. And I remember a friend of mine telling me one day, he was just like, wow, dude, I mean, if you can do this in 5 minutes, it might, this might be a thing, but it was definitely the moment I heard Gil Scott-Heron, and he's still one of my favorite artists. I was lucky to see him live before he passed away a couple of years ago, and I've got I've got loads of vinyl of his and stuff like that. Like I absolutely love Gil Scott-Heron. I'll get, any day of the week I listen to it, but it was definitely the moment I heard that tune, I knew something inside. Like I've only ever, there's only been a couple of times I've heard music where I've really thought like, you know, like your legs shaking because you're like, wow, what is this? Like, wow, you know, I'm listening to something that's blowing my mind right now.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, that was the tune, and it definitely changed me as a human being. Like, it sounds nuts when I say it out loud, but it really did. Like, really was a thing. Like, yeah, love that. Gil's got Aaron.
What was the first poem that you wrote? Sort of after, sounds almost like a bit, you know, an epiphany or certainly an awakening. What was when you kind of started to think about things different, look at things a little bit different? What was the first poem that you wrote that then?
Do you know
Or I
what?
guess
It's a difficult one because I used to write on scraps of paper and just throw it under my bed, stuff like that, you know, like, or throw it in a box or whatever, you know, like, or just get rid of it, or, you know what I mean, shout to my friends and have a bit of a giggle, and I probably still got it somewhere actually, and it's probably terrible, but it was called Boom. I remember writing this poem called Boom, and I'm sure it's terrible, but I do remember writing this poem, Boom. And I have no, you know what I mean? Like, could be good, like, but yeah, I kind of remember writing it. I think that was a moment when I was like, I think that was probably the poem I showed my friend and was like, there you go. And he was like, and he was a guy who I respected. He was kind of, you know, built like a brick shit house, had a good brain on his head. He actually ended up in the forces too. And I just remember him reading it and going, you might be all right at this, you know, like, so yeah. I mean, it's a slow development as well. Like, don't get me wrong, overnight, I wasn't suddenly, I mean, even now, you know, I'm not, you know, but overnight, I wasn't suddenly completely different. But, you know, you start that process of thinking differently and then developing, and, you know.
So when did the sort of transition to like performing, and when did you kind of get the confidence to start you know, doing this out loud?
Whiskey.
You know, in front of people?
Whiskey. Like, the truth is, and this story is verbatim, I tell everybody. My dad had been given a bottle of Jimmy Walker Black Label whiskey that was engraved with his name on it. And Dad doesn't drink whiskey, so I don't think Dad really knew how much this whiskey would have cost. And I used to go to an open mic night, and at this point I was maybe 19, 20, maybe early 20s, I can't remember. And I'd been writing poetry for years. I'd been published a few times in regards to like poems here and there, that sort of stuff at school. And I was just writing it and sticking it in boxes under my bed or whatever. And then we used to go to an open mic night when my dad worked for the MOD. We lived in Hemel Hempstead, which was actually the longest place I've ever lived. But yeah, so we moved to Hemel Hempstead, and he was working for the MOD in London. And we used to go to this open mic night at Hemel Hempstead Old Town Hall. And basically, one night we went after drinking Dad's bottle of Jimmy Walker Black Label, and I saw a performance poet. And I'd never seen a performance poet in my life. She was a girl. I have no idea what her name was. She blew me away. Like, she blew my mind that you could get away with that. And of course, because I was half a bottle of whiskey deep, I signed up to perform at the next open mic night. Like, yeah, I'll do this. Yeah, I can do this. Great. This will be amazing. And yeah, the month came round and I stuck to my word, and I turned up to the open mic night with a couple of poems written on A4, and I stood in front of this sort of, I don't know, 40 people that they could fit in there, and I was like, and I read the poem shaking my, you know, like, I was so scared, like, I was really so scared. But then the crowd's reaction was really good, and people talked to me afterwards. And again, I was like, oh, you know, actually it was kind of a rush, and it was kind of fun. And I got to share some of this stuff that I've been hiding in a box under my bed for the last like 25 years or whatever, you know, like however long I've been writing at that point. So early 20s. So like, I've been hiding under my bed for what, like 7 years or something. I don't really know, whatever, you know, like, but, and then, yeah, and that's how it started. So from that night, I started going to those nights on a regular and reading poetry. And then I went to London, and I was lucky, I bumped into a guy who ran something called the Raison d'Etre Collective. And then the next thing I know, within about a few months of starting reading, then going to London, I was on the Jazz Cafe main stage reading poetry before Little Dragon came on. You know, like, and it was insane because Gil Scott Heron had actually performed a couple of months earlier. So for me, I was like, oh my God, you know, like I'm on the same stage as Gil Scott Heron stood on, like, wow. You know, and I just, and it kind of all, I've been kind of lucky because I've hooked up with lots of different crews as I've gone along. You know, I've been able to get to do, like, you know, I did Shoreditch, I did Cargo with the Raison d'Etre people. Like, you know, I've had these opportunities because I'm quite a loner as well. Like, even though I hook up with these groups, I'm very kind of like, you know, even with my skateboarding, I'm very kind of like, I'll go skateboarding with a crew, but when it comes to skateboarding, my brain is just, it's on the skating. I'm just skating, you know, like, you know, I was in a band briefly, but my brain doesn't really work like that, you know, like stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, but it's been good. I mean, literally, that is honest, the God's honest truth. Drank half a bottle of Jimmy Walker Black Label with my friend who drank the other half.
Yeah.
And then became a spoken word poet.
and how long ago was that? You say early 20s? Did you say, you think?
Yeah, so probably 20 years ago. Probably
Right.
20, if not a little bit more, maybe 22.
20 years ago. Wow.
You know,
In that time, what's been your favorite place to perform?
Don't know. I mean, I did Festival. That was good, but that was because that was a lot of money for very little time.
Right.
but no, I mean, it's weird because, you know, if I'm honest, I love, you know, I performed at Margate on Sunday and I loved it. Like, it was amazing, but probably, oh God, I don't know. I could tell you my worst. Probably, you know, I don't know, like, anywhere's amazing if the crowd's good and the crowd's really responsive.
Yeah.
Definitely the night I performed No Regrets. It was in front of a local crowd. My mum was there, you know, that night when she was there. But then there's been awesome, you know, like there's been moments I performed at oh God, I think it's called the Shakespeare one night many years ago, and the crowd really did not give a shit about any act that was coming on. And it was when Scroobius Pip's The Beat That My Heart Skipped first hit the charts, and he was performing because he was part of the same collective that I was part of at the time called Lazy Gramophone. Absolute great bunch of dudes. So Scroobius Pip was coming, so there was a few famous people in the crowd, and everybody in the room, this place was absolutely rammed, could not give a shit about any performer at all. No, they really didn't care. They weren't listening to anybody. So I leant over and I said to the barman, I was like, look, dude, I'm on next. But if I get up on that stage, nobody's going to listen. Can I get on the bar? And no, the Macbeth is what it's called. It's called the Macbeth. It's quite a famous pub in London. Quite a big place for music and stuff. And literally, the MC came on. They talked all the way through the dudes before me, like nobody gives a shit. And then he introduced me, and I just stood on the bar and I unleashed to this fucking crowd. Like, I mean, I went, like, I was, you know, because I knew I had to get them, and I had to get them quick, you know. And that's probably one of my favorite nights because it was do or die. Like, it was no balls, no glory, because the crowd did not care. And I got up on stage and I just unleashed on this crowd, and it had them. Like, they all stopped. They all looked towards me, and they were like, and I got some amazing photos from that night too. But it taught me a good lesson because, again, I did a gig about a year later at I want to say the Museum of Modern Art, but that's not what I mean. The Tate Modern in London. At one night there where Laura Marling was playing, but before Laura Marling was like really massive, and the same thing was happening. And at that night, I sort of said, and I said the same thing again. I was like, look, dude, can I get on the bar, because otherwise I'm going to get destroyed if I get on the stage. And they gave me a security guard because I was going to do it, and it was all like, you know. So I did exactly the same thing, and it was great. But I remember I was doing a poem called I'm Not This Town or something, and I raised my hand and I broke the lampshade. I broke the lampshade as I did it. And I remember afterwards, because like it was fine. I went afterwards out for a cigarette, and I don't smoke anymore. But I went out for a cigarette, and the security guard came out with me, and I was like, "I'm really sorry, I broke the lampshade." And he's like, "You were good, so I'll let you off." I was like, "All right, okay, cool." But yeah, probably that one at the Macbeth, definitely, because it was, it could have gone horribly wrong, but
Yeah.
it was all right in the end.
Are there any times that you remember that has happened, that you've kind of gone out and it's just you couldn't wait to get off? You knew right away that it was like,
oh God, yeah. I mean,
have you?
Yeah, definitely. Like every gig can't be great. Like it just is what it is. Like I'm lucky that not many have been really dog awful at all, and I've done hundreds of that, thousands or whatever. But probably the worst time I've ever done was when I got the opportunity to perform at Sprite Urban Games on the absolute, random off chance. So when was it 2007, there was the bombs in London.
Oh yes.
So there was the bombs in London, and previous to this, the Sprite Urban Games had been on, and obviously Sprite Urban Games skateboarding. So me and my friends always used to go, and used to be able to take a crate of beer in and just go around and have a good time and party and stuff. But the year after the bombs in London, Sprite Urban Games was on. We all bought beer to get into the Sprite Urban Games, and of course security was completely different then, and you couldn't do it. Like there was no chance. And basically, 2005. Cheers, Mike. Cheers. Basically, yeah. So it was probably 2006 Sprite Urban Games.
Delta Mike Lima, Matt, knows 2005 well, because he was actually serving as a Metropolitan Police when those bombs happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that was crazy. Delta Mike Lima, I wonder if he got lots of phone calls from people just asking if he was all right, because I did, and I didn't even work in London at the time. I just lived in the south because my family's from Blackpool, so they were like, "He's in the south. Are you all right?" But yeah. Crazy times.
Oh, absolutely nuts. Yeah, I'm sure he'll say, but I know he did, because I was one of those people. I remember it well. He was working down there and actually involved in it. Yeah, absolutely nuts. Yeah. Sorry. So anyway, yes, the games.
No. Bananas time. So the next year when it was on, they changed the security protocol.
Yeah.
So you couldn't bring alcohol in, but we'd already bought our alcohol. So we then proceeded to drink all of our alcohol and then go into Sprite Urban Games. And weirdly, there was a stage, there were some rappers on it, and I had a friend who knew one of the rappers, and he called me up to this stage to do some spoken word because he knew that I did performance poetry.
Yeah.
So he called me up to the stage, but the problem was at this point, again, like 2006, it was a long time ago, I was probably the best part of a crate of beer deep. And he handed me the mic. I think I said about 3 lines, and then I just said, "You know what, I'm too drunk for this," and just walked off the front of the stage to the Pim's tent. And it was terrible. And you know what? It's so embarrassing right now, because even now, I think then I would have loved to have been sober, and just done my thing. Yeah. But it happened. And I remember saying to my friend Molly, I was like, I walked up to my friend Molly, who was there in the crowd, and he just looked at me and he goes, "Well, you've definitely been better." Oh God. It was bad. But yeah, and I'll never forget that. It makes me cringe every time I think about that. But
well, don't cringe too much longer. All right. We'll move on to your next song, and we can talk about something a little bit merrier.
Yeah. So my next tune is Manu Chao, Merry Blues. And that is, if you've never heard Manu Chao, Merry Blues, super political artist. absolutely amazing. But his music is like uplifting, and it makes me feel like I'm in a happy place. And basically, many moons ago, like again, early 20s, me and my friends, we used to go on tour a couple of times a summer, and we would go to Cornwall, and we would sleep on beaches, skateboard and BMX all day, eat out of tins, you know what I mean? Like, it's just sleeping bag everywhere, turn up at campsites at 1 o'clock in the morning and pitch up tent and try and leave before they came around to charge you, like all sorts of stuff. But we did this for years, and the soundtrack at the time was probably Manu Chao, Jack Johnson, but before anybody knew who Jack Johnson was, because some of the dudes that we hung out with were surfers. And before Jack Johnson got big, what a lot of people didn't realize was he already had about 6 albums under his belt, and the surf community loved him, and G Love and The Special Sauce. But this song, Manu Chao, The Merry Blues, just makes me think about going on tour, sleeping in sleeping bags on the beach, and just skateboarding all day, and hanging out with the BMXers, and like it's so many amazing trips. Whereas nowadays, I kind of think to myself, oh yeah, I'd love to do that again, but would I really? Well, would I? Would it be Reading Festival? Where I went to Reading Festival this year, stayed in a hotel every night, like that sort of thing. As you do as you get a bit older, and you're like, I'm not shitting in that toilet anymore. No, I'm going to get myself a hotel. I'm going to have a shower every night. And I just suppose, I can listen every time I hear Manu Chao now. I'm just like, they were good times, man. They were good times.
Yeah. My good lady wife put the firm foot down in our festival experiences. And the last time she said, enough's enough. I'm not doing this tent malarkey. She said,
"Yeah,
you'll need to take me glamping. That's the least that I will accept." And guess what? I took her glamping with the girls. It was actually a lovely setup at Kendal.
Kendal Calling.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Many a time skateboarding in Kendal.
And the glamping, the big bell tent that we got, flooded.
Classic.
I know, but Kendal, great place there. So you got some memories from there as well, have you?
Oh, mate. Well, I went to school in Milnthorpe, which is 9 miles away from Kendal, because it was in the days when the army paid for your education. So my parents sent me and it was when boarding school, so like there was maybe 50 kids in the boarding school, but it was a regular state school, and all the kids were army kids. So, like it was a regular, like people were like, oh, it must have been posh. I'm like, nah, dude, it was a state school, but it was 50 kids. So we used to, and I was lucky because I had a girlfriend who lived away from my boarding house, and I'd go and stay at her house, and her brother got into skateboarding. So we would go to Kendal because there was one shop there where you could buy skateboards from. And I remember ollieing down a set of stairs in my early teens and getting concussion and ended up in Kendal Hospital.
Oof.
But I mean, we used to go, there's Kendal where you can go and watch the cinema and drink beer in old barrels.
Ooh.
Sit in the old barrels.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Good.
No. Like it was like a thing. So we used to go there and we used to smoke.
Oh, right. Okay.
We used to smoke cigarettes, and we like Kendal was, I mean, there was this one skate shop where it was really an outdoor mountaineering shop because of course it's Cumbria. Yeah. And the guy used to get skateboards in, which was like the only place you could get skateboards at the time. Yeah. Like it was really difficult. So I spent a lot of time like Kendal. Lancaster was good too. Used to go to Lancaster on the weekends.
Yeah.
Go skateboarding up there. Yeah, I mean,
good memories. Of all those skateboarding memories, I have to ask this, right? There's ex-military guys watching that you know it's a sick, twisted sense of humor. What's the worst injury that you sustained skateboarding?
Oh God, I made my foot face the other way once, and then it took me about a year. So I've done lots, and you've listened to No Regrets. So you know, I once got hit by a car riding a BMX, and that was probably the worst injury I've had. But yeah, no, I was skateboarding. I mean, I've had loads. Like I've, you know, broken my wrist, knuckles, dislocated my shoulder, but breaking my leg. And I remember we were shooting a photo for the local newspaper because we were trying to raise money for a skate park where I lived in Hemel Hempstead at the time.
Yeah.
And I think I was like 19 at the time, maybe 20. And I ollied this thing for a photo and I just misjudged it. And I looked down and my left foot was facing backwards.
Shit.
And yeah, and it was really gnarly. I had an operation. It got infected. So when they opened my cast up, it was grey and it stank. And there's like a big like hole to my leg. And it was really, yeah, like it was pretty crazy. Like, I'm lucky because my dad's a bit leery and he threatened to sue them, so they sorted it out. But yeah, he threatened to take him to court and got his barrel. Like, got people. Like, it was crazy. But yeah, it wasn't great, and it took me about a year. It took me a year to be able to walk without a stick.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I could walk without a stick, I went and bought myself a new skateboard. It's what we do. It's what we do.
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, now I've still got, I'm just touching it, but basically I still have where the hole was. It's not flesh. It's just skin.
Yeah.
So like you can't, like, it's just hard, you know, like, but
War wins.
Yeah, you got to pay to play.
Yeah, too right. So here's one for you. You mentioned taking people to court. I like asking this question to people that come on. If you had £100 million, what would you do with it?
What would I do with it?
Yeah, 100 million. Ego, Matt.
I'd go traveling with my other half, give some to my family and go traveling with my other half. Like, honestly, like, I'd probably, you know, I mean, that's what I would do.
Where would be first? Where would you
Fiji.
Go first? Fiji.
But it's because we made a deal, me and my lady, we made a deal that if we ever won everybody's got to have this deal, right? If we won the lottery, we'd hit Fiji first, but for no reason. We were just like, because it seems really far away and it looks expensive, so we'll hit Fiji. But at the same time, I'd probably pay somebody to do my poetry side of stuff, like sort out some videos and stuff like that, so I could still be putting content out whilst I was traveling and having a good time, because I'm one of them people that, and I think I learned that from my pops, I'll always be doing something, you know, and for me it will be the poetry side of things, like, just, you know, just, there's always got to be, even if I'm a millionaire and I can pretty much sit on my ass all day, I would be out there doing something, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. You know, I mean, I would travel, and, you know, now I think about it and you've asked, I'm like, I'd probably start a charity and, you know, do some sort of skateboarding like fund where I would fund skate parks, you know, or help out communities that are, you know, built. There's lots of skateboarding stuff out there, like SkatePal, which are the dudes who are using skateboarding in education with kids in Palestine. Skateistan, some friends of mine have been involved in that, which is basically educate skateboarding, but really educating people through skateboarding, tying in education in Afghanistan and different places like that. You know, so I probably would, you know, like, keep one toe in the skateboarding side of things as well and help other people.
You see, that's a perfect lead into this question, because I didn't write it down, but I was gonna. If you had to give one up, if it had to be skateboarding or poetry, what would go? Is that too mean?
No, mate, I think I'd rather plead the fifth on that one. It's too difficult, man.
Don't do that to me.
It's too difficult because they're kind of both part of my DNA now. I mean,
yeah.
you know,
That's why I ask about these songs. It's like what's woven into the fabric of our being.
yeah.
It's also why I asked it. I didn't think you would be able to give an answer to it.
It's too hard. But I definitely think I'd be a lot angrier if I didn't skateboard. Like, you know, like for me, you know, people talk about having things with their mental health and stuff like that. For me, skateboarding helps so much. You know, like shitty days, shitty weeks, shitty months can all be kind of not necessarily undone, but you know, you have that go skateboarding for 3 hours. You know, if I'm dropping into a 10-foot pool, I'm not thinking about what a shitty day I've had, because you can't, because you will eat shit. You know, you have to focus on what you're doing. So yeah, there's been times when I've had, you know, awful times in my life where things have happened and I go skateboarding, and for at least that time that I'm out, and maybe a bit after, because I'm a bit more zen, like people meditate, I suppose, and it's a bit like meditation. You know, I'm free of that worry because I'm just focused on skating, you know, like.
Now it's an interesting one where I'm going to let you tell me about your last song, because you talk about, like, you know, having a bad day and like mental health and stuff like that. So I said that we would talk about blokes, and I do want to ask you about that again, but let's do your last song as well, because this is another one that I'm very interested to hear how this has got woven into your DNA.
Do you know what? It's just I wanted to put something new that I'd recently discovered, because there's so many. It's quite difficult, because whenever you say to somebody, "What's your 10 favorite songs?" in your brain, you're like, "Oh, that's dead easy." But when you stop and you actually try to pull out those 10 favorite songs, it's horrific. So with this, you're quite loose. You were like, "Give me 5 tunes," and I'm like, "Cool." Sleaford Mods, Mork and Mindy. I only heard of Sleaford Mods 3 months ago. Never heard of them at all. And I was watching telly one night. They came on. I was with somebody who was like, "What is this shit?" And I was like, "Oh, mate, this is actually pretty good." And I'm now pretty obsessed with Sleaford Mods. And if you've ever seen them, it's just like some old dude gobbing off over the mic in a sort of poetic, shouty fashion. And this other dude with a big beard stood next to a laptop just going. But it's so mesmerizing and so good. And then again, not to harp back to it, but at the gig I was at on Sunday night, a guy did a line that he got from the Sleaford Mods tune. And I said to him afterwards, I was like, "Do you listen to Sleaford Mods?" And he was like, "Yeah, I do. They played here." And I was like, "Oh my God, I totally knew that from your poem." Like, and I just think that, again, for me, I'm very lyrical. So I sound like an old dude. I don't listen to a lot of mainstream hip hop anymore, because a lot of it is like mumble rap, and you know, like that's, you know, there's no message anymore. You know, I grew up listening to Public Enemy, you know, like NWA, Ice Cube, you know, all those people that had a lot of messages in their music. You know, it wasn't just about how much money they've got and how many bitches they've got, you know, like, so, you know, Sleaford Mods to me is something else. Like, lyrically, it is interesting. Like, if you get over the initial, "What is this?"
Yeah,
it is, you know, like, it's different. Like, I'm gonna go and see them live as soon as I get the chance. Absolutely rad.
See, I'm gonna listen to them again, because I've listened to them a few times. I've kind of been through the process of I've had that immediate reaction of, "What the fuck is this?" And I've revisited them and I've kind of gone, "Yeah, you're still a bit shouty." So maybe I'll go back again and have another listen and just.
But I mean, that's okay though. Like, it is okay if it's not for you, you know, like, it isn't. Because I was tempted. There was also another tune by a guy called ASAP Rock.
Called Rocky. Yeah.
No. ASAP Rock.
ASAP Rock.
Yeah. So ASAP Rock, I'll send you afterwards because it's very good. So not ASAP Rocky, which many people think I'm talking about, but ASAP Rock.
Yeah.
I nearly picked his because he's got a tune called Ruby 84. He's a hip hop artist.
Yeah.
But many years ago, a guy analyzed how many words every hip hop artist uses to see who has the biggest vocabulary. And he had to take ASAP Rock out because he skewed the results so much. Because his vocabulary is so insane. But there's a tune, I'll send you it straight after this, called Ruby 84, maybe. And I nearly put that in, but I was like, you know what? Let's go with something new. Let's go with something really new. But yeah, Sleaford Mods. I can't wait to see him. It's gonna be good.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, and it's. Do you know what? It's going to be nice to just get back out and I guess gig for yourself. Have you been back out doing anything?
Yeah. So Sunday Night was my first one.
What was your first?
Yeah, in front of a real crowd, and it was great. I was lucky because I didn't know, but I was signing, which is I didn't know. But it felt really nice, really good crowd. Really responsive. Sold a load of books afterwards, which always helps.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you sell a load of? Did you sell a load of this?
I did. Yes, I brought one with me. So yeah, which is all good. So yeah, that kind of makes it worth it.
Anybody watching wants to get a hold of it? Where do they go?
So for right now, you can either hit me up on Instagram, which is @MattLloydPoet. They're £10 or you can get it exclusively currently from shookbop.com. That's shookbop.com, which is my publisher's platform. So I'm holding off. We're kind of holding off putting anywhere else. The first lot sold out. So if you have problems ordering it from them, just hit me up and I'll sort it out. We can get it in the post. So, but yeah.
And apart from these that we've shown earlier, you're featuring in another publication. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I saw a sneak peek of the book, so I've not got it yet. I've ordered it, but I've not got it yet. I ordered it when I saw the picture. So I've ordered a copy, but it looked as if it was Blokes 2020. Is it an updated version?
Yeah, but it's only. I'm going to turn the light on because I feel like I'm slowly disappearing in the past. This is my new. Next time we talk, I'll have skateboards all along this wall because it's my new. We just moved, so this is my new little working space.
Oh, brilliant!
Oh, there we go. Look at that. Yeah, it is. So this is the book. Surviving Suicide. Ticked a couple of boxes for me, which were insane. One, I'm in a book with Benjamin Zephaniah, and two, I'm on the bloody cover. So absolutely stoked. But I suppose, like many things, I've had a lot of things where I talk to people. Recently we were doing this sort of interview for my friend's mental health scene, and she was asking me about how I write about mental health so much, and I'd never really thought about the fact that I write about mental health quite a lot. So there's quite a lot of poems in What You Missed that are about mental health.
Yeah.
But it's almost that I'm not really thinking about writing about that. I'm just writing it. And that's the same thing with Blokes. So Blokes, when I first wrote it, was about a real life experience. But the ending, which was true, I've slightly changed. And the ending really, and I'll just go into it. I mean, the ending of the original poem is, probably would have called me a gay. And that poem was written 10, 15 years ago, something like that. And I suppose all I've done really is just change that last line to something else, because the poem itself, that sort of language in today's day, and it's not about changing it to suit people. It's just we move on, don't we? And that sort of stuff.
We move on.
Doesn't fly.
Yeah.
And it's just one of them. And literally, it was just I performed that poem at a gig, and the guy with the slightly changed ending, and the guy who put the book together and edited it, basically was like, "Oh my God, do you want to submit that poem to this book I'm doing? All of the profits are going to go to Mind. I think it would really fit in the book." And then, he got Benjamin's F&I involved, and went on my website, and there's a picture of me and Ben together, which was just me as a fan with Benjamin's F&I. And then he was like, "Oh, this would be great for the front cover." And I was like, "Wow, what?" And then he spoke to Ben, and Ben said, "Yeah, definitely." And I didn't believe it. And eventually, yeah, it's like a real thing now, which is nuts.
And there's some of Ben's writing in there as well, right?
Oh yeah. He's got a couple of poems in there. Like that's definitely. But I mean, it was kind of sad at the same time, because unfortunately, going back to what you were talking about, the day that I found out the book was available to buy, and was actually a real thing, which was kind of, because as somebody like me, I've worked on lots of projects, and that have never come to fruition. I've had lots of promises that things have never happened, so I kind of don't believe it till I've got it in my hands. But the day that I found out it was real, I was about to post about it, and I got a phone call, and that was that my cousin had taken his own life, and he was ex-forces. Nobody knew, nobody had any idea. So I kind of didn't really talk about the book until, that was 5 weeks ago. And then I finally sort of posted about it yesterday and said, I've got mixed emotions about this, because on the one side, amazing, I'm in a book with Benjamin's F&I, I'm my childhood hero, I'm on the cover, but at the same time, the same day I found out about this, my cousin had taken his own life. And I suppose it's one of them things that, even though my poem I wrote years ago, it's still a thing that we need to talk more, especially people of a certain age who weren't used to sharing as kids. And it is, and you see it even today with the reaction to Simone Biles pulling out of the Olympics. That's her name, right? Simone Biles, the gymnast.
Simone Biles, yeah.
You hear people say, like, "Oh, what a wuss," and stuff like that. But it's of an older generation. Like, young people aren't saying that. Young people respect what she's done and how she's come out. But people like us, we're not used to talking about it and sharing like young adults share nowadays and young kids share. So yeah, I mean, rad. It's great. I love the poem. I love that. It's still relevant today, but it also kind of sucks that it's still relevant today. Because hopefully we'd be in a better place.
Yeah, it's and I've periodically said it as conversations have found their way to here on the podcast and in the with guys that I've had on. What would you say to anybody that watches, or that does watch, that isn't ready to share? What would but is suffering, I guess. What kind of message would you give to them?
You're not alone. Definitely not alone. And sometimes you find that it only takes just a little reach to somebody for them to open up to you. You then realize that you're not alone, and and then it's almost like a floodgate opens, because you're like, "Oh my God, I can talk, I can, and it's sometimes it's just those little comments. I remember I was having a anxiety thing, imposter syndrome, that sort of stuff, and I remember the first person I mentioned it to, and they were like, "Yeah, I feel exactly the same way." It was amazing to have those conversations with people. And it is, like we were saying earlier, sometimes it's just, I wrote a poem called "Are You Okay?", which was about how everybody says, "Are you okay?" but they don't really want to know the answer. They're not really listening. But at the same time, when I put it out there, so many people got in touch with me. So many people just, are you all right? But also people that just rang me that just wanted to talk because they were finding it tough, themselves. And I think that all I can say to people is find somebody and reach out, because you will find you're not alone at all, and that many people are going through a similar struggle to you, even though right now you feel like you're totally alone, and it will give you that, for me, it was like a warm hug to say like, look, dude, you're good,
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Wise words. I've had a wonderful time this evening.
Mate, me too. It's been great.
We're not finished yet, are we? Can we take the tempo up a little bit?
Oh God, what are we gonna do?
Can we finish on a high?
Oh wow, I've not read that poem for so long. So I actually have it here just in case, because it has been a long time. So
what I thought we would do, right? Because this is a first for those that are watching. What I thought I would do is actually introduce you, say good night to everybody now, and I'm just going to take myself out the stream, and I'm going to just hand the stage over to you. You don't want me on the stage. This has been a brilliant conversation, but I'm going to introduce Matt Lloyd, Beats, Rhymes and Fife, and just take myself out and hand over to you, if that's all right, my good man.
Okay.
And then once we're done, if you can say thanks for tuning into the JFDI podcast, I'll finish the broadcast. You stay in the green room and we'll have a little bit of a chat. And everybody else, thank you very much for watching.
GFDI. I've got to remember that. GFDI.
JFDI. It stands for just fucking do it, mate. Are we ready?
I'm in. I'm just writing that down because I know I'll forget. Right, let's do this. Okay, so cool.
All right, you write down what you need. You done? Thank you very much. Delta Mike Lima says, he says, great chat tonight, gents. Just another quick one. There was a little chat in there. I think when we were looking at your books, they said more shameless advertising. Surprised you haven't mentioned The Disappearing Scotsman, which is actually my debut novel. And hold on a sec. Mr. Fairclough came in and said, give him time. So yeah, we've got a plug in my book as well. But enough about me. Tonight's been about Matt Lloyd, and this is Beats, Rhymes and Fife. Thank you all, and good night.
Okay, so this poem was really written for a bunch of suits who didn't know the history of of the amazing hip hop group, A Tribe Called Quest. So this was kind of my way of summing it up to them. And unfortunately, I then found myself in an auditorium in front of 500 people reciting this poem to them. So it's been a long time, so I'm going to see if I can try and get some rhythm. So this is the history of a group called Tribe. We go back before Q-Tip was Q-Tip and he was MC Lovechild. Before Fife Dog was Fife Dog and he was the Crush Connection. Before they were on the first ever Rap MTV Unplugged with a live bass section. These two MCs, friends who grew up together, went to church at age 2, would change hip hop forever. They got the bug on the streets where hip hop was christened, where the ghetto blasted tuned to DJ Red Alert and the people listened. This was Queens, New York, the city that cultivated a global culture and was about to give birth to the new school. In '85, they formed the Tribe. There was one DJ, Ashid, Ali, Shahid Muhammad, and 3 MCs, Jerobi, Q-Tip, and Fife. The beats, the rhymes, the life. In 1990, they dropped their first release. While most of hip-hop was screaming, fight the power or fuck the police. They were rapping about leaving wallets in El Segundo, or love songs about apple bombs, youthful expression or safe sex. In 1990 in hip hop, this was as different as it gets, or so we thought. In 91, they dropped the low end theory, which cemented a Tribe Called Quest in hip hop history. This was the Sgt. Pepper's of hip hop. They fused their conscious lyrics with live bass, jazz, and bebop, dragged hip hop into a new age, and helped shape the rest of the decade. And they didn't stop there. In 93, they released Midnight Marauders. It features Busta Rhymes, De La Soul, and is arguably flawless. And despite hip hop's trend for gangster rap, they kept their conscious aesthetic. Q-Tip, Phife Dawg, and the Funky Diabetic. In 96, with production from Jay Dilla, they dropped Beats, Rhymes, and Life. The album went platinum and was Grammy nominated twice. They finished the decade with the Love Movement, and the Love Movement finished a Tribe Called Quest. After years of silence, and apart from a single performance, it wouldn't be until 2006 that they would reunite, and the original lineup would rock the mic. In the following decade, they toured half the globe, headline Rock the Bells, and sold out shows. They even toured with Kanye West, or should I say, Kanye toured with a Tribe Called Quest. In 2015, after an appearance on Jimmy Fallon, the group worked in secret on a brand new album. But 4 months in, we lost Phife Dawg at 45, and hip hop mourned when Phife Dawg died. We've Got It From Here, Thank You For Your Service was released in November 2016 to much critical acclaim. Album of the year, many critics would claim. 31 years after two childhood friends helped form the Tribe on the same streets where hip hop was christened, we listened to their final album. In 85, they formed the Tribe. There was one DJ, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and 3 MCs, Jerobi, Q-Tip, and Phife. The beats, the rhymes, the life. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for tuning into the JFDI podcast. I hope you had a good time.